push the big button, and uh, if everybody has an image, right, handy to work along with, then we will come over here and we'll begin, drawing with Mullins. That almost works. It's almost a rhyme. Scrawling with Mullins, and we will do some. I've come zoomed in pretty close here today. I think that'll be all right. You can be able to see what I'm doing. Maybe I'll pull back a little bit if I run out of room. We'll see. Behold the platypus, right? And follow along, take notes, draw along. But, it's, let's see. We've done some line stuff. We did contour, we did structure. We got into shape and value. We got a hardcore we introduced charcoal. We've done all this. So maybe I'm thinking if we started trying to put things together, put it all together, maybe really built upon the lineless sort of thing, but also the idea being that all of this, seeing the negative spaces, working with structure. I thought maybe, before we got into the human form, we could get some living creatures, who has drawn their pet ever? A pet. If you don't have a pet, Let's see. So let's see about a continuation or an expansion upon the lineless tone application stuff. And let's try to put this stuff together. Now, everybody here has done a lineless drawing, but it was in charcoal, right? It was a toned paper, right? It was an area of, what would that look like? In graphite. We talked about that. Let's see, that was Monday, September 26th, last Monday. We went through the whole thing. We had, these patches of tone, right? And I believe I uploaded a video because when I did that last Monday, I did a groundhog with a apple, right? And has anybody watched the video that I uploaded of the groundhog and the knitting groundhog image? Has anybody watched that? Somebody speak or give me a thumbs up or something. I'm getting confused here. It's that time in the semester. You've seen it, right, Zong? Now I'm starting to think.
I thought you do it in class, so I didn't watch the video.
How about an email? Did you get an email saying there was a vid?
Yeah, I got the email.
It was a short one, right? Did anybody watch it?
Yes and no.
Somebody's saying they watched it.
I watched it.
Yeah. Okay. So just let the old guy get his ducks in a row, or his rodents, as it were. And if you saw it in class, you got the, you got the lesson, but I think it's good to kind of revisit that. But you remember this stuff, right? But then thinking about like how all of this stuff might sort of get combined or collapse together. Now, if you have a very, very good ability to interpret based upon value and shape, I would say that that could practically get you everything. It really could. That's why I sometimes make those kind of, little remarks like, there, I taught you how to draw, like everything can be as a shape, and then you can describe it as a value. And then, of course, that becomes, value becomes color once you start working with color. You read the color. And with these lineless drawings, we sort of worked on, putting the value tops and so forth. And I was saying, don't put a hard edge. Don't, it doesn't mean that you can never do lines again. Certainly not. I don't know. Let's play around with, this. I mean, if you're doing a line drawing, you might say, well, now I know to lightly put contour information like this. And of course, the stuff you learn about shape, will influence it'll influence your line work. It's impossible to not, if you really start seeing negative shapes, for example, you begin to see them when you're, if you were just seeing the edge of the positive as you make these lines, next thing you know, well, I'm also drawing the edge of this shape, right? This becomes very, very handy when we're doing the figure. And of course, we've got the comfort. We've got the comfort today of, I've got a two-dimensional image and it's not very big and it's all, like that's all very sort of comfortable. Once you go into a real room with a live model in real space, that's a very different kind of thing, obviously. It's better for you, but it also can feel more challenging. But, maybe I'll do some of this stuff. Maybe I'll do some of this structural stuff first, not too dark, but if I was drawing a real live large platypus, which I don't think would hold the pose and stay very still for me, incidentally, but I might begin sketching it like so with some light structural stuff, but I've already, just like here, I did a little bit of cross contour kind of thing. Hey, this is a round sort of body, and I feel that it turns around, and I might work across the form a little bit. I might check. Ooh, whoa, there's a mistake right there. That's not completely exact. It's not that, it's this, and I can go like so. The best checking I can do is to look at this space, this shape, and use those. I might draw some structural lines across, though, really lightly, to help me in the initial drawing of the platypus. Just how do these things we call, what are they on a platypus? Are they fins? Are they feet? Are they, I don't know, whatever the, we'll say his hands and his feet, or his, and, maybe I'm doing something like this to compare the relationship between, this and this. Sorry, I bumped that. Maybe some stuff like that is good. This is that structural line kind of stuff applied to, a living organic kind of thing, but you can still do it. I think I showed in the before I got into the homework assignment, I think I was showing some of this kind of stuff, a simple sort of structural thing from the live model. And maybe going around like this, maybe I might begin to indicate a little bit of plane or major shape information. You know, but we also know, as per last lesson, that if I just start dropping in value, which does a lot, and I'm good at seeing it, and I'm bold with my pencil, and I don't. Somebody's not muted there. You know, I could begin just going to tone. This is what we practiced last time, which is tone first, shape second, and refinement later. But it doesn't mean that, you know, okay, that's the superior way to draw, don't ever do that, you know what I mean? Like, oh, geez, I wasted time doing line. No, it doesn't mean any of that. It doesn't mean the fact that you could theoretically get, if you get really adept at working the way that we worked last Monday, that it does so much for you, especially as far as moving from drawing into other media like painting and sculpture. It doesn't mean that, you know, you just, well, forget about all that stuff that we did before, I'll just work on that. No, let's try to put them all together. Let's try to so, you know, maybe I do a really quick sketch of the platypus, and it is handled primarily with one method. Maybe I do a more involved, more finished drawing of the platypus, and maybe it has a couple of, you know, like, I guess what I'm saying is I'd like to, for us to make some nice drawings from these images of animals, but I'd also like for us to try to feature what we've done so far, you know, collapsed together in our drawings. You might even do some drawings that show varying degrees of finish in an effort to do that, to sort of display different approaches and different things, meaning I could have like, if you did some drawings today that were sort of like really resolved, like they had some area that was tightly finished and had all the value work and was really, you know, meticulously, you know, but then they had some other part of the same drawing that still showed the earlier kind of working out of things, then that would be just fine. That would be great. Not like, well, part of it is sketchy, I don't care, but more like it was begun structurally, and then this part of it is tightly resolved with full range of values. Or maybe you do both. I'm expecting some papers by the end of this week, because there's today and there's Wednesday, that have, and varying in size too. I did this example, this quick little example, like kind of at the same scale as my little image, but you don't have to. You can draw some, don't do them too big, But you could play around with the scale and you can float these in different places on the paper. And maybe I'll get, you know, some, well, I know I'll get, because I'm going to ask you to, I'm going to do a bunch of review today, but then I'm also going to ask you, let's put this at the front end. I was thinking I would do it at the back end, but let's put it at the front. See these? Who has taken these out? I know I brought them up when I was on the homework spiel. Who has gotten out the pens? Thomas, did you get them out? Play around with them?
I actually have used microns before, so I had a bunch.
You like them, right?
Yeah, they're really nice.
Yeah, they're usually yeah, people like them. And here's what I want you to do. Just write this down. With some of these animals, try some graphite drawings, but also let's do some of these. So what this would mean is it would mean I'm also going to I'm also going to make some
不知道什么动物。No idea what kind of animal it is.
It's a duck-billed platypus. Okay, so you know, let's get these into the mix too. If you find them in your kit, and if you haven't had them out yet, and these may be like, whoa, at first. Now, I see some things are being put into the chat, which I actually don't know if I'm in this share screen. I don't know if I can actually, I can see like that people are posting chat, but I don't know if I can actually see if I can see those. I think I'll have to see those after I end the screen share. So if you're not able to verbally ask.
There aren't any questions. It's just people telling him he's unmuted.
Okay, I could see that. Yeah, you'll find that the first thing you want to do with these pins are contour work. That they're really given to that. I mean, and why not, right? You have a flow of ink, and you have a kind of, and you'll enjoy, I think, the relationship, between the pen. I've got one of the finer points. You've got a package of 3. There's different sizes, right? So those sizes will mean, it won't be like the pencil where the pressure will determine the line weight as much. That will still be there, but it's just different. The size of the pen you use, it'll be more consistent. And the size of the pen you use will be your big determinant of the weight of your line. And it does not mean that you can't do solid shapes of value, but to do you may find that there's some, well, what do? Do I go like, do I do this number? What do when I want to talk about value, like what is it that I, because the thing that I was showing you with graphite, meaning this is not the same. If I work this around, I'm not going to wear it down blunt and get some kind of, that's not going to happen, right? If I become really, really sensitive, I might get some variation, like really gentle sort of dancing on the surface, and I press a little hard. Like, you can get very, very good, and you can get a lot out of these pens, but it's not a pencil, right? It's not graphite. But I'd like you to play around with these. Now, if you've got something like, whoops, I got into doing contour work, and now I see that I got a space that's like way too big, and I'm not going to be erasing that. Okay. But I really like these pins, and I'd really, obviously, some really light pencil work where you work that kind of stuff out first, and you know that you don't have any big, you check the negative space, you're like, well, it's shorter, some really light work like that, and then going in and, inking, so in illustration and in comics, this is how it's done. As a matter of fact, in illustration, there's usually a blue pencil that's used for that, because then it won't be seen by, it won't be picked up by the, the camera won't read it. They won't, I remember using blues and then inking them and using I don't know, now archaic photostat machine. And it was cool because all my stray lines, remember stray lines from the day that we were trying to not have any fear of the stray line, my blue lines that were still, they just weren't, they were gone. There's not in the mix. So we'd work with the blue pencils, and we'd go over the ink, and then we'd take photostat and so forth. But you can just do light pencil work, and then you can go over top of it. Another thing that's cool is to do something with your little skinny tip, and then decide later, like, well, where do I want to go back with my thicker tip and add a heavier line weight. So if I just keep one of these in my hand the whole time, I may not, it may be that, well, wait a minute, line weight variation, rather than trying to do it the pencil way, maybe I can work with a skinny tip, and I'll just go back and I'll add heavier line weights with a thicker pen, and that will be lovely too. Okay, so I'm thinking about pages that you make that have different, more than one drawing of these animals, and different handling, so later on when you submit to me, I'll get a page and there'll be a smattering of animals around, but I'll see lots of different evidence, so I've got a pen and ink drawing of this lemur, and then I've got a graphite tonal drawing of this lemur, and so on and so forth. So let's just do some review. I'll see this as also as providing sort of like review, because that's really what it is that we've had a certain amount of stuff that we've covered, and it's a lot, but also we've reached a point where, while I may introduce new things, and do a fold over here. While I introduce new things, it's time to start putting it all together, right? So, and I'll show you new things. There'll be things we do, or we're working from the model or whatever, and I'll be like, do this, and it'll be something that we haven't done before, but we will refer to things we have done before. Okay, so, reminders and reiterations and same stuff, but with maybe a new light cast on it, is maybe some of this, if you still feel like, well, I was doing those lineless drawings, Mullins, with the graphite and the toning and all that, and I quite liked what was happening, but I also still felt like I was, getting some proportions and things, and so whatever, and and I'm thinking that maybe some of this kind of structural stuff to get me started, and I'd like to have that so that when I proceed, I feel like I'm not going to discover after I've added all this value that there's something I want to change. Although if you're comfortable enough, that won't bother you either. Like you'll just move it, you'll just change it. But for the sake of it, I can work like this, with these kind of chunky, blocky, which feels pretty different on a living creature, versus a stack of books or a chair or one of those kinds of objects. But the same thing can be kind of going on. And I've seen really good results in painting, figure painting, approach this way, where I'm not going to get picky yet, but I'm going to look at these outside kind of things. I'm going to study like I'm doing the rough cuts in a sculpture, and keep sort of checking this kind of stuff and moving this stuff around. I'm going to keep it structural, right? So at first, maybe we've got almost like a wood block kind of thing, but we're actually looking close at these relationships and checking, something like that, the right kind of thing. When I go in here and I add value, is this kind of what I want? And then when value, there's a good example of that here. When a big change in value indicates plane or whatever, of course I know that if this little fuzzy friend were to turn a different direction, that there would no longer be this light and shadow division in the same place, but it's there now. So I can actually indicate that, like so. And I can draw through lightly and see where things are in relationship, before I go in there and start trying to render the features of this guy. I can do this kind of thing, and that will work. I can back away and I can check as if I've cut this out roughly. And spending some time in here, looking around and sighting, it's called, and just asking myself, well, if a line ran through there, where would it go? And that's kind of coming out similar on my paper, so I must be in a decent place, and doing a bunch of that. And then really loosely, maybe something about a big shadow shape. Squinting, looking at things quite generally. Right. And if I believe that I'm not getting anything, terribly wrong, but staying in this place of comfort and analysis quite a while, again, this is not made of the same kind of, it doesn't have the edges that an old sewing machine has, right? But I can sort of, put it through the same kind of chunky analysis. And then if things don't seem too bad, I may want to go around and refine some contours, but I also may want to dive in with shape and value work, right? So the idea is a page of various wildlife that features examples of what we've learned so far. Show me your line work, show me your structural work. You might even apply tone in graphite and then erase back out. If you've had that experience yet, that I'm hoping you'll have, where you're working with a pencil and you wish you could just do a big swipe, or you could, if you're aware that it takes a while to sort of fill tones with graphite, and if you're finding some of the sort of things about the charcoal lessons, but I hopefully at the scale I'm working right now, I need to be bothered by anything like that, but it does take a little time to fill a large area of tone with working this way versus a stick of charcoal. But there's ups and downs to every media. You know, maybe I've also got you whatever affection you may still have from ink pens. You may find that when you go to do value stuff, it's like, no, wow, this is kind of tricky now. This was really great for a line, but I'm not entirely sure. I need to kind of, you know, I need to think a little bit about, and certainly when I have a pen, I might be more at risk of going towards small stuff. And my need to perceive the general before the specific and to work on describing the general before the specific may be a little trickier with an ink pen, probably. But I also can take advantage of the fact that the ink, you know, if I am someone who works lightly, you know, the ink immediately goes to a kind of, the contrast happens automatically, probably, or I can build up lines with them and get things that way. Now, eventually, many of these have furry, you know, like last time I was talking about, I made some sort of like marks. I said, like, this is the symbol for hair, and watch out for that. Now, a little bit of sort of like marks that indicate texture or say this is fur, that's fine. But if you don't have the little sort of changes, and they can be anything, they may be like triangular or something, you don't know. If you start looking at light and dark, you'll find that in the case of fur, you know, you're going to have to get a light and dark pattern established first, usually. If you do that, then your drawing will be fine with some of your little textural sort of marks. But you can't do it with just those things alone. You have to sort of get some of these. You'll find yourself working negatively. You'll find yourself putting in, like I'm doing right there. You'll be putting in some little shape that's basically a kind of dark space between some fur, you know, and without those, it'll be really hard to get a real sort of really convincing sort of sense of fur. So remember that. Remember that a little bit of this kind of fur indication kind of mark will be okay if you have some structural stuff in there that is about value. But the best way to do fur is break it down into light and dark first. So, you know, across here, I've got sort of like, you know, a difference between darker and lighter. And then, you know, I have to see that kind of stuff and have it first. If I just think fur and I make the marks that reflect me thinking fur, it may all still look flat. Here's another one of these big sort of triangular kind of in between the fur moments. A few of those included will give me that appearance because it's the truth. But if I leave the value out and I just start doing this and this only, it'll only go so far, right? To really describing what's happening there. So keep that in mind and remember that division in light and shadow is your best sort of ally in that kind of thing. that seems really, and once again, it's the general before the specific. What is the big light and shadow breakdown of, the mind thinks about, oh my gosh, all those little bits of hairs and all the, but overall, what is the division between shadow and light that can be found? Because if you get that, that will be telling the truth, and that will work. Okay. So if I create a drawing of a sloth that way, and then, okay, Mullins, I hear you. You want some variation here. You want some handling and different types of what, maybe I'll take out my pen and try to do a study, and maybe this one I'll slow down and I'll begin with contour. Maybe I'll follow that up with with an ink drawing. Okay. Okay, so some notes on this stuff. This is something I always like to do. And I've got a particularly, if everybody looks here at this wildlife picture, where just caught a bass and the dog is sniffing it. And so how would we deal with something like this, right? Well, we know a bunch of things. We know that we can chop it up structurally, like I started this sloth. We know that we can look in the negative spaces. We know that if we start studying shapes, we can, here's another reproduction of the exact same image, and I'll make these even easier to see. We know that to really get this right, we need to get our eyes doing this. This is what I was saying, like I made some, goofy thing, but it's like, imagine that you're the Terminator and you can sort of like you zoom in and you can lock in on the shape. Now, we don't have a name for where I just put my indicator, but what we can find it really easy because there's a massive change between the color. There's like this brown patch, and then it goes to white, so we can distinguish it really easily. Okay, that's not something. Now over here we might say, well, the nose, and of course what we call the nose sits in this kind of area, that's shaped weird and has, notice how if you squint, these two things kind of rub together. And the biggest distinction between them is the greenishness over here versus the purpleness over there. But if I see how, if you squint, this is an edge that I know is in there, that I'm actually, if I play it up as much as I just did, I'm actually probably not telling. Like really value-wise, this kind of runs together. But our brain is like, that's the edge of the fish and the dog. So we want to make that a big deal. But it may not be that big of a deal. Okay, just like we may know the mouth of an animal is there, but it may be enveloped in shadow, and we have to just sort of like do the shape of shadow that we see. This is, for example, this whole area through here is in shadow, even though I know that it's probably an effect of the light, and that fur there on this dog is probably quite similar to this or the same, but this is catching light and that's in shadow. So any shape is actually possible. For example, here's another one, the ear. But if I can do this with my eye, what I'm doing with the red, which is like locking in and finding, and of course in this is a very bright day, so the lighting situation is really pronouncing these differences. There may be other lighting situations in which, well, I can see the change between this fur and that because of the hue, right? But there may not be a sun that is making such a difference. This is created by the fact that there is a topography, you know, a little muscle or a bump, you know, like this shape right here, this weird shape, that if I actually move over here and say, well, what is that? You know, this is that thing. You remember last time when I was doing a review, I snuck in a sort of sneak peek of two friends that were laughing with each other. And I said, I took it off, I saw it on the wall at Pamela's and I took a picture of it. And I was talking about t-shirts and when you filter away all the midtones and you get, you know, so you can make a stencil. So my image here, I mean, look at that shape. What the heck that is? There's no shape like that anywhere that I can look up that says this is how you draw the cheek or the jaw of, you know, a beagle or you know what I mean. There's no such thing as that, and this will change if the animal moves. So we have to just sort of be ready for anything and be good seers of shadow and light shapes, which again, once again, hook together and connect together tightly like two puzzle pieces. Now, this image provides us with a wealth of these kinds of pieces of information that many lighting situations and many things will not. I was just drawing the sloth and it's not as pronounced and as clear as it is in this image, but it's there, right? I still have to be able to find the distinct shapes. And the reason they're distinct is because there's a big, now in this case, it's often a hue in the mix as well, but it's a value change that allows me to see this versus that. I can find that shape, you know, but there may be some places where those changes are subtle. But the easiest thing to do is to find the big ones. And of course, if I filtered away all my subtle tones, things like this area would probably just, and these little things that are subtle would just vanish. Stuff through here would just vanish. And I would probably be left with this one and that and this and so forth, because you only get two. You get light and shadow. And that's a great place to start a drawing, is a light and shadow division. I'm going to write that in front of us here. Light and shadow pattern. Okay, so we've gotten into that and we're elaborating on it now as we practice getting all of the techniques that we've learned so far to come together in a drawing. Because if I was doing this drawing, I might do some really good negative space examination to understand what's going on along these contours. Maybe this shape, I mean, if I cut that out, this shape right here, this one, never mind all that grass or whatever, but if I just cut that shape out, you know, I'll get this fish and I'll get this dog, you know, but I've got to cut this one out. Same thing up here. This one's easier to see. What is that? You know, I might do some contour work at the same time that I'm seeing this shape in here. I might run along this edge and do some contour work. I might do some loose structural work at first, in which this is kind of chunky indicated. Chunkily, is that a word? And then by carefully examining the shadow shape, I may get it exact later. And then here's one of those ones I was talking about last Monday where this is all hard edge, but then over here that gets, see this fades softer, right? Here, this one is hard, can't miss that. But a lot of these other ones around have softer edges. Okay, so this lighting situation is giving me some nice hard edges. Isn't it amazing how many of these kind of shapes have like pointy, kind of weird, like, okay, so here's one. You see this? Here's a crazy shape you would never expect. I extracted it from here, right? Okay. Over here, this one. Well, I locked in on that, and it's something like this, right? I just, that, something like that. That is kind of nuts and nothing like I would ever think, you know, if you just told me to imagine a dog's neck and draw, you know, I'm not going to come up with that. I might come up with, you know, you know, wrinkles on my dog's neck because he's got loose extra skin. It's really cute, you know, but I'm not going to come up with that. That is a specific result of a specific situation created by light and shadow. I'm certainly not going to come up with this bigger one here, right? With an idea of what a dog's neck is or what it will do or so forth. I just have to be open to anything, okay? Here's another one. What is a detail in the drawing but a small shape? So there, this area of pink, which we call, you know, a dog's lips or jowls or whatever, which is probably one of the most visceral things I've seen this side of intestines, or, you know what I mean? Dog mouths aren't they crazy? You know, with all that. But that is shaped something like this. This right there. It's interesting how puzzle piece like this is, isn't it? Not puzzle piece like a standardized, you know, one of these things repeated over and over, but how they are these weird things, and then they fit together with a neighboring shape. That's what I mean by how light and shadow lock together like a puzzle. Can anybody tell me for a sticker? By the way, if you've been getting stickers, if you've been awarded stickers, I'll just say this now. For correct answers like chiaroscuro or planes or something like that, if you've been awarded stickers, all you need to do is email me a mailing address and I will send you your stickers. The quantity corresponding to the number I have in my notes, okay? Just FYI. You absolutely can redeem your stickers. It's not just figurative, it's literal. I held one up to the screen before. There are a couple series, so you haven't even seen them all. They get better. Can anybody tell me for a sticker what this kind of thing, when I begin sort of like delineating and in an effort to isolate and point out the particulars of these shapes, is there anything that comes to mind? There's something that exists in the world, I'll start giving hints in a minute, that it makes you think of, especially if we were working in color. Anybody want to try, I guess? Okay, here comes a hint. Think cheesy, kitsch, pop culture stuff. Something that almost seems like it would be undermining the sophisticated art goal of being able to draw and paint well, because you're using the, you know, what to liken it to. Okay, Could anybody see how, if I was explaining this, putting these kinds of indicators around shapes on an image for a painting class, you might think about painting by numbers. Paint by numbers, you seen that stuff? It's still out there, right? I see them in, sometimes people are into them with irony, the way they're into having an Elvis on black velvet, or you know what I mean, one of those dolls with the ridiculously big eyes, or some other kind of like really sort of, but the paint by numbers thing is actually based on, you know, as it's beyond lowbrow. Paint by numbers is like, you know what I mean, it's like, well, I can't do it at all. But what it shows is this guy, once upon, I think it was the 40s, might have been the 30s, but this guy basically applied Da Vinci's system for how to make a painting to something that could be cheaply mass produced. And so, you know what I mean? You get these like little things of about 6 colors, which is not a lot. And you get like, you know, but there's this thing with these kind of blobby, and then they're numbered. So then you don't have to do what you would be able to do if you trained your eye, which is see the shapes and match the colors. You don't have to do that because they indicate the shapes for you, and then the numbers tells you which to put where. And of course, it doesn't give you, the reason those things look a certain way is because it only gives you, like, you know, a small number of, you know, it's not like it gives you a great range of, I tell you to use the full range of values. Now, I wouldn't even say that, you know, that's giving you a full range of values, and it's in, you know, in full color, but it's just like 6 or 7 little choices or whatever. But what that tells us is, it tells us that if we don't have to do that, right, then we, you know, can sort of just assign, you know, like the shapes are indicated and there's already an assigning of this color goes to that shape, you know what I mean, then we've done sort of work. And this is what Da Vinci had figured out, is painting as shapes of color, right? So we are doing drawing as shapes of gray, which is that gray scale and that value scale that we, of course, right here, I'm indicating a shape that if I were to, soft edges happening here, not hard ones so much. And here I would want a lighter shade of gray in here than I would want up here. Sometimes, though, it can surprise you. Sometimes what looks like a really dark shadow isn't all that dark. It's just that it's right next to something else that's really light, and it can trick you. So I wouldn't want to put the same gray here as I have over here, but I could get fooled if I'm not experienced at comparing lightness and darkness. So does everybody see what's going on with this? So with these kind of indicators being made, let me get an unmarked up version of my reference image and another surface upon which to draw. And let's see if I can kind of, well, how well can I manually see those shapes and indicate them? So it's a fun game to play, you know, to try to do that with our eyes. You know, I mean, there's one on the ear, can't miss it, shaped about like so, you know, there's one. And to try the contour work that we learned right away, and I know that many of you began to do so, you know, if you've got this kind of stuff, you can see it. The thing that where you might have found yourself practicing this, maybe feeling a little out of sorts, but not, you know, knowing that you wanted to talk about the folds, perhaps, on a backpack, and you know, you knew where the outside contour of the backpack was. You knew where the edge of a strap was on a bag. You knew, you know, you were doing the right thing when you were on the edge of a particular thing. But then there were places where it's like, well, it's all the same value, but I see differences. And you see, you know, what you were seeing is you're seeing a light and shadow pattern, but it wasn't literally, you know, you weren't seeing an edge of where we would say one thing ends and another thing begins. But on this one form you were finding, things not that dissimilar to what we're seeing here, right? And maybe it wasn't as explicit because you didn't have a super bright sunlight situation or something, but you were there and you were trying to sort of work it out. So if I were to try and do what I was tracing with red a minute ago, maybe I'll get some of those kind of like pointy, weird, jagged shapes. And it will be interesting to try to practice drawing them this way and then sort of like check, you know, like go to my other copy of this image and sort of check what I traced in red, but literally putting the red pen on the surface and tracing a shadow shape. You know, what I did with just my eye, you know, it can be kind of interesting, well, to compare. But if I get reasonably, you know, if I'm working this way and things are reasonably accurate, like maybe I got too much of a distance up here and maybe I didn't get the exact, you know, maybe it's not that, it's a little bit of this, and maybe there were some furry wrinkles that threw me off a little bit, and maybe I missed one of these little points that stuck out right there. But you know, maybe I can make something like this not unfit for looking like a paint by numbers guide. But before we decide like to throw that away, because everybody knows paint by numbers is for, you know, buying in the Five Below store or the hobby store or whatever, and the whole point is that it's novelty and it means like you can't do it. We now know that if we can see the shape of shadow and light, that maybe I can contour shadow and light patterns as well as just the outside edges of things that I know we give a name to and we call things. Okay, so, and maybe I can find some of these subtle, maybe I'll just do it with lighter line weights. I was talking on that first day about the intuit, you know, when to press a little harder, and intuit when to go a little lighter. You know, maybe when I have a darker shadow or a bigger change in value, I sort of make, you know, I'll press harder. And maybe when I have in here, when I have subtle little value shapes that almost sort of fade away, maybe I'll just let my contours of those shapes be a little lighter. So I'm, again, trying to speak about how these aren't like really, if they seem like super divergent ways of working, shape and value and contour or whatever, I'm trying to connect, I'm trying to bridge that sense, because we want these kind of things all working together. So playing around with, as I'm describing these shapes, you know, when it makes sense to press a little harder and really emphasize one of these, and when it makes sense to go a little lighter. So connecting day one's drawing with more recent shape and value explorations, because we're always looking at forms that are three-dimensional and are in space, and light and shadow sort of tells us things about them, right? So I want you to be able to switch back and forth or to put them together, you know? So I've done this, and then I'm glancing over at my my other copy that has, you know, the red traced. You know, I didn't trace it with my eye. I literally traced it on the page. And, you know, I've got distinctions, of course. But I've also got a more than passable kind of contour start here that I can build up and develop more now with some subtle lines, and I can follow the form, meaning, oh, hey, it's cross contour. I won't just go whoosh, 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 whoosh through here. Maybe I'll get some lighter lines that sort of follow the round brow of this canine. And those make sense to have a little less. And I'll stay out of this area where I see a highlight. Like, see how this is like just really, I'll stay out of there. So this all relates to the lesson in cross contour, right? So I'm getting very, very different line weights, like day one. I'm getting cross contour like a subsequent day, but then I'm also really seeking and finding and describing shape information, right? Because this can be seen as one big shape, and that can be seen as one big shape, and so forth, and so on and so forth. So while I haven't done the lineless drawing, I haven't done exactly what we've, you know, it's kind of, I'm kind of working with the same things, right? And so it will be up to you when you're working on your homework drawing, which of these methods, you know, seem to be the most right for you. You may have a preferred medium, like, oh, that's just my favorite and I like it. But you also may make choices about, well, what's the way to do this that would, you know, that would work well. Because you've got, if you've got reference, you've got something to look at, and you've now got a lot of things at your disposal. And you can warm up working on these creatures, these animals. You can warm up by examining them, doing studies of them that are alternately or some combination of, you know. So there is a study of this dog sniffing a fish, you know, using contour work. But now that I'm a good shape seer, my contour work is enriched by that. I don't have to throw anything away because I'm doing shape. I don't have to, you know, my contour work is benefiting from all this seeing of shape. So then there's that, right? And then next to that on your paper, your 18 by 24 page, which will have many drawings of animals, you might also give me one of these, more like what we did last Monday. But what if, you know, we haven't done gesture yet. We haven't done gesture per se. I keep talking about how it's coming. The gesture is coming. Gesture is coming. But, you know, gesture, the staple of figure drawing, for very good reason, is a thing that kind of really folds in well, collapses well, blends well with cross contour and everything else too. So I could do a drawing like so of the exact same subject, in which I do a combination, say, of contour, massing in, but I could keep the massing like light, structural drawing, you know, so I've got no fear of the straight line, and I'm not worried about anything like that, and maybe like, whoops, that's not, yeah, just changing that. Thank you very much. No big deal. It's early. Not worried. You know, I could be doing that kind of thing in which I'm seeing shapes and I'm seeing, you know, and I would say that this is like a little bit of cross contours going on, and some of the structural stuff's going on, and some of the massing in is going on, and it's like it's all happening at once. Like maybe I'm switching back and forth. I prefer to think that the stuff is just, you know, if I'm making marks, it's reflecting my seeing of a bunch of stuff at once, and some of its shape and some of its value and some of its, you know, and it's all falling together. And then I can take a look and say, okay, you know, fair enough, change this, add that, adjust this, keep looking, you know. And so I might make a drawing this way that goes along with the drawing I just made, you know, a loose gestural, you know, and actually put some of the values, because the previous drawing talked about it through contour work and so forth. But, you know, this time I'll actually start toning, right? I'm putting in some tone, but I'm looking at the same information. You know, so this would be a little bit more of a, we did a strict lineless drawing to practice, you know, shape and tone, but, you know, we can make this sort of halfsies, you know, a bit of this, a bit of that. I'm still looking as much or as hard as I was on the previous effort, but being less contoury about it. So that's probably not a word, contour, that's not a word, but you get the idea. Some of the words that are used all the time, whenever I put art speak or artwork, or there's a whole bunch of words that like Word will give me a, you know, a green underline or a flat or a red, you know, because it doesn't recognize. So I might as well make up some other ones too, and just call them art words, you know, drawing words. But you get the idea here, right? Okay, and this can be combined. I can go back into it, and maybe even put some of the exact same things that happened in the other drawing into it, or not, okay? But let's begin to put it all together. Somebody show me a drawing. Someone elevate my mood by placing a, who's got one? Who's got a drawing they can shove up by their camera on their laptop and, closer. Oh, I see a French bulldog. Closer. Zoom in there. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I like that very much. Nice to see. Anybody else got a got a study of they're willing to share. You don't have to do it today if you're not ready, but let's make some big efforts at, each one of these we'll draw at least twice on our page, and we'll try to get two different approaches. They don't have to be the same scale. Something can be smaller, one can be bigger, but we'll try to get two different approaches on the same page, or combinations. Some drawings that sort of speak about structure and shape and value, or you'll find that your pen will be really good for one thing, but you'll have to work harder at another, and then you'll feel like the graphite is kind of, you'll feel like that. You'll feel like, well, this media is more given to, and of course, the whole thing with the lineless drawing and the graphite was kind of like making the pencil behave like the charcoal, and not using the pencils just for line and getting more sort of shape and tone stuff out of it. But you'll find, like, well, when I go over to the pen, seems like another kind of but your explorations of how to talk about the shapes, if you're seeing the shapes and the values, what you do with whatever is in your hand. If your perception, now I'm pointing at my eyes right now, if your perception of that information is good, you could have anything in your hand. We could be doing the ink wash, you could have crayons, you could be, it's going to happen. I think good things will happen. Let me put us back into gallery view. And okay. So today, I just want us to get some practice from these cute animal friends of everything we've done thus far. So don't just draw them one way. Try to refer to everything that we've done so far, and try, maybe I'll do a contour study here, or I'll do a contour with some, mixing them up, okay? And think about or reflect upon the in-class lessons, maybe replay a video or two, this one, maybe some others, to help you with that as needed. And we'll work on this next Wednesday also, okay? Out of class time, you know what I want you to be doing, right? I want you to be committing that to your homework drawing. If you have need, I know that the prompt and the parameters, or the, that's a weird word to say because I don't want you to put limits on yourself. But I know that the, sort of what it's about. I know that if anybody feels that they don't have lofty ideas, that they can, well, I can draw, I can do a fabulous drawing of my workspace, right? I can go to that but I also think that many of you are probably kicking around ideas. And if you have a couple of them and you feel like torn, and which one would be smarter? Because with my experience, I may be able to anticipate an issue that you can't, right? It will be less like, can I do this or can I do that, which is more about asking permission. And it won't be so much that I'll respond like, well, you can or you can't, it'll be more like, well, what's that going to come out like? What's it going to look like? How will that be, And I may be able to think, well, it seems like if you're going to do that, you need to consider this, What I'm saying is you need to consult with me via email, or chat, Zoom chat. That's that's completely available to you. Don't, send the email and ask the question or show me, describe or show me, sometimes with references or sketches or planning stage stuff. People can simply say, I'm thinking about this and I'm thinking about that, and I don't know which way to go, or I don't know. And then there's also sometimes some major drawing execution issue that is, in the way. Okay, but if you remember what you've learned and the big things to avoid that I've talked about, I think that you'll make good decisions as long as you put enough time, effort, and love and care into your drawing, and you make sure that it has enough contrast and so forth. But if you do want to do an idea check or something like that with me, do so. So try to put the amount of practice on today's drawing, which is going to end up being an 18 by 24 drawing with various studies of animals on it. Try to get it like halfway-ish. If you could say like, well, I'm halfway, then I think you're in a good place, and then I can simply send you level two animals for Wednesday. But meantime, out of class energies and time go to homework drawing, okay? Questions, concerns, things to share.
So I'm just a little confused about the animal drawings. Are we supposed to do those by Wednesday?
No, get like halfway, and then we'll work on them again on Wednesday.
Okay, on the bigger paper?
Yeah, it's going to be an 18 by 24 page.
Okay.
And we'll just position of different scales, or maybe even fragments. You could do parts too. Like maybe you just want to do a big sort of study of the dog's head, say, but they'll be sort of, on the page. Da, 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 da. And if you're about halfway, well, then I can send you some more, because I've got level 2 animals that I can send over for Wednesday.
What if I've already started the animals on the sketchbook?
Well, that's okay. You can jump over to an 18 by 24 page and just carry on.
And you said we want at least 2 different methods for each animal, right?
Yeah. When you're drawing one of these animals, do a study, and then when you do your next study, try to do one that like speaks of different approaches. So if you do a completely tonal drawing of a lemur, then your next drawing of the lemur, you might try to feature the structure and contour and or things like that. But don't do 2 that are like just drawn the exact same way. Okay, great. Very well. Okay. Use the remainder of the time, if you think you need to do some animal drawing, but also homework drawing, right? We're in like less than a week to go, because as I will talk about I will zealously address critique formats on Wednesday. So please do not let time pass by that should be going to your homework drawing. Okay, very good. Have a wonderful Tuesday, rest of Monday and Tuesday, and I will see you Wednesday at 2:40.
One quick question.
Yes.
Do you have anything we could do for like shading or sort of tone practice? I've been noticing I have sort of an issue with getting good tones out, and sort of ending up with like big blocks of color that don't really match up.
Oh, now, would you say when you're doing graphite, this is the case?
Definitely with graphite. I had an easier time with charcoal.
Yeah, because you can rub and do all that. Now you can actually do you can do quite a bit of smudge and that kind of stuff with graphite too, especially if you get enough of it on the surface. But my immediate sort of thing that I'm thinking with your question would be to literally just do some grayscales. I like this question. I'm going to go back over to share screen and do a little quick visual sort of answer to it. I get this to come up. So you might just, with a soft one, like say your 4B, or don't do it with the HB. You know, don't do it with a real hard one, but maybe with 4B, say, you might actually try some of these. They don't have to take too long, and you might actually try some of these numbers where just going like this and trying to, you know, wear it down and get the tone, like just practice sort of filling and play around with the pressure, not trying to draw a particular thing yet, but sort of like, see what I'm doing here?
Yeah.
I actually think that's a really, you know, and then like, oh, I'm not, how many variations am I getting? And maybe I'll try to do some really light, gentle ones, but keep them solid. And then like a little bit of this is actually not a bad thing to do at all. There's something with gesture that I actually showed. I just said, like, you know, there's a kind of, with gesture, for example, I would say like there's a natural kind of S curve that happens if you're doing this right, you know, and I showed that, and I actually would have some folks that would be sort of doing this S curve before they began gesture drawings. And I think if you're getting ready to do a bunch of tone, like going off of your drawing to the side and sort of doing this until you feel like you're in a zone and you're toning better, can be very helpful. You might try to actually make a grayscale. You might try to actually go, well, meaning from left to right, trying to make it gradually get, you know, like keeping them in order. That's harder, you know, but I wouldn't discourage you from that either. And while you're doing it, make sure that you're not getting like a lot of paper showing through. Like if you make a light tone, try to make it an even tone. And don't feel like you can't, you know, and last of all, maybe break out in that kit these blending, you know, the paper stumps, the tortillons. Everybody, if you haven't used these yet, right? Anybody that hasn't used these, because that's the real ticket to getting super refined, you know, because you literally can just blend these. Sometimes you use these to get more. Here, I'll do it on this sloth, just for, you know, you're doing this just to make a particular little shape. Sometimes you're doing it to make your tones really even, you know, but you can get things much more like the charcoal, I think. And these are in different sizes, right? You got a big one that's for large areas. You got this for like smaller areas, but do use them. You know, they will help with that, right? So don't forget these little, I mean, they're basically, it's paper that's been wound tightly and compressed, you know, but do use them for your value work. Okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Right.
Whoa. All right, hold on. I got one more coming in through chat, which says, how do you clean the paper stumps? You know, technically these things can be sharpened, but you know, I've never cleaned one. I don't know if that's a thing. That seems like a Google question. Is it, can you clean these things? Technically, you're supposed to be able to put these in pencil sharpeners and sharpen them. That might be a disaster, but you know, they're sort of like wrapped tightly. Try sharpening them. See what happens. I've never actually done that. Can it be done? And if so, is this another material that you just wear out, or can, you know, but I've seen people, you know, what happens when you put them in the sharpener, you know? Okay. Happy drawing. Happy homework working. And happy autumn weather. I'll see you on Wednesday.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.